we're always looking for add-ons, but specifically add-ons that are multidimensional and add on like many layers of benefit to a TRT protocol. One such compound is a compound that you guys have heard me talk about before, I'm sure, on live streams and otherwise. Something I've been implementing and been using on and off for probably about a year and a half. And it's a compound that not only controls your hematocrit or can substantially lower it in the case of you wanting to run a cycle, or if your hematocrit's pushing high, you're not really wanting to go and give blood donations, but also via some nitric oxide mechanisms and a PDE5 inhibition mechanism dramatically enhances erectile quality. So think of it, right? Lowers hematocrit, improves erections. It's a pretty good add-on for TRT. It turns out there's actually a whole bunch of literature on how effective and how powerful Naringin is for nitric oxide, for erections, for, in this case, preventing post-stroke depression, for lowering hematocrit. And in this video, I mean, look, improving hematocrit or hematological markers, as well as improving erectile quality, in some cases very dramatically, the fucking great TRT add-on. Let's get into it, boys. Before we start the video, look, Cortex Labs is a TRT guidance, sexual dysfunction resolution, and performance optimization company. You got a range of different products ranging from the Torque Stack, Adderall without the side effects, essentially, powerful nootropic. It's 20% off. Code is down in the description of this video. Source list, a compilation of trusted sources for anabolics, ancillaries, and hormone hacking agents, cheap HCG, DHT itself, testable esters. You can get it down in the description of this video. And lastly, I'm a coach on TRT protocol restructuring as well as sexual dysfunction. You can hire me for a one-off call or an ongoing package in under a minute at livecortex.com. So right off the bat, you guys have heard me on live streams talk about Naringin. I haven't done a full breakdown of Naringin on the channel, but this is what we're doing now. I've used it largely to control hematocrit. My hematocrit doesn't go above range and isn't problematic on TRT doses, even if I push 250, 300 milligrams. However, if I push above 450, call it, I think it was 420 was the cutoff for me, hematocrit does go over range and I get a certain set of symptoms that are a little uncomfortable. Obviously, if you're running cycles, it depends on the person, but 300 milligrams plus, if you're running half a gram or more, then you've got to monitor your hematocrit. You don't want it going above range, despite what some people are going to tell you. People think it could be up to 55, 65. I disagree strongly. You don't want it that high at all. So Naringin lowers hematocrit. Naringin is an extract from the couple fruit, but what we're all familiar with is we know it as an extract of grapefruit. This is actually why, if you consume grapefruits on a daily basis, you're probably going to have lower hematocrit. Now, for those interested in the mechanism of how Naringin lowers hematocrit, then we'll get to the rest of this good stuff in a second. This is a paper that's titled Ingestion of Grapefruit Lowers Elevated Hematocrits in Human Subjects, in which they say this study was based on in vitro observations that Naringin isolated from grapefruit induced red cell aggregation, so this is a mechanism for lowering hematocrit, and evidence that clumped red cells are removed from the circulation by phagocytosis. So it basically aggregates and clumps up your red blood cells, and then they are removed from the system by a different process, a different physiological process. And the flavonoid Naringin occurs naturally in citrus fruits, especially grapefruit, again, where we know it to be most prevalent, where Naringin is responsible for the fruit's bitter taste. This is why grapefruits taste a little bitter. It's because of Naringin. Now, interestingly, in humans, Naringin is metabolized to naringenin, which is not bitter, but it's metabolized by what it looks to be an enzyme that we already have in our gut, which makes this even more interesting, called naringase. So we've got naringase in the gut inherently, which metabolizes Naringin. All right, now let's talk about hematocrit quickly, then we'll talk about erection quality, because again, this is one of the most potent compounds that you can take on top of TRT to foster better erections. Let's get through the hematocrit stuff first. Back to that study, what they ultimately found was people that had very low hematocrit, Naringin actually increased their hematocrit, but people's hematocrit that was problematic and troubling, it lowered it. They end up concluding in this paper that you could get away with not taking Naringin powder if you had just ingested a grapefruit a day, but I don't know. I mean, who wants to do that? I certainly don't want to do that. Let's talk about erectile quality, shall we, boys? Again, this is what makes Naringin a very powerful TRT add-on. This is a paper that's titled Naringin Regulates Erectile Dysfunction by Abolition, which is basically another word to describe the abolishment of apoptosis and inflammation, that it describes some of the pathways that it does it. Now, what they did in this study is they gave hypertensive rats this compound called bisphenol, which, by the way, is in a lot of plastics and does disrupt erectile function through a variety of intracellular, intrapenile mechanisms. And what they ultimately found is that Naringin reduces cell death, right? It basically shuts it off, induced by like environmental factors that mess with cellular function and in the penis. And they validated the hypothesis that Naringin may be a valuable remedy in abrogating penile inflammatory markers, apoptosis, and enzymes of ATP hydrolysis. And this does so via the main pathway that facilitates erections, which is the nitric oxide cyclic guanosine monophosphate PKG signaling pathway. So that's one mechanism by which Naringin can aid in erectile quality, and it's actually pretty powerful. I have experience with it. Well, I'll talk about my experience here in a second, but also they go Naringin prevented hypertension and erectile dysfunction by inhibiting the activities of not only angiostensin converting enzymes, arginase, but also phosphodiesterase 5. Phosphodiesterase 5 is PDE5. In other words, Naringin is a mild but effective PDE5 inhibitor, which is the mechanism for both sildenafil or Viagra or tadalafil or Cialis. Okay, let's talk first about dosing, and then we're going to talk about caveats, because there is a caveat to using Naringin, as there is most compounds. There is no free lunch biologically, as our buddy Tim Ferriss would say. But generally speaking, it's a pretty innocuous compound. I dose 220 milligrams of Naringin every other day. That is my dose, 220 milligrams of Naringin. And the reason that I dose strictly 220 and I do not do it every day is because that's enough for me personally to keep hematocrit in a satisfactory range. It's enough to enhance PDE5 and erectile quality, but it also potentiates the use of my 5 milligrams a day of tadalafil, but without causing side effect, because it can potentiate the effect of tadalafil or Cialis. So that's another thing that it does. It potentiates your, any erectogenic drug that you can take that's mechanism is PDE5 inhibition, like Cialis. Because of this potentiation, it actually, in me personally, has the ability to lower my blood pressure too much, because what it ultimately ends up doing is increasing the concentration of tadalafil in the blood via inhibiting its metabolism. Now, with that dose, I don't get side effects, my erections are better, and I have a better response to 5 milligrams of tadalafil. When I take it, it's so profoundly powerful that it's as if I had taken 20 or so milligrams of tadalafil, which is fucking crazy. I don't need to take 20 milligrams of tadalafil to get an extra erectogenic effect on top of my baseline. Just 5 of tadalafil and my routine of 220 and Naringin every other day. Now, I suggest that you start on the low end because you don't know how your blood pressure is going to respond to it. I think if you're not using tadalafil, you're probably just going to be fine. Most people have elevated blood pressure, or it's right around the top, or it's like normal or whatever. Mine typically tends to run low, probably because I'm a runner. So start at 100 milligrams every other day and then work up to tolerability. Monitor your hematocrit, monitor erections, monitor blood pressure, and then dial in your dose from there. I think you probably wouldn't want to go over like 700 milligrams every other day. I'm not even sure people would need that high of a dose. That would probably drop your hematocrit maybe troublingly low to the 41 or 39, call it. And, again, if you're taking any erectogenic drug or PDE5 inhibitor in and of itself, because it's a PDE5 inhibitor, that might lower your blood pressure. So just take heed. Now, with that, yes, let's talk about the caveats. Okay, this is a paper that's titled "The Effect of Grapefruit Juice on the Pharmacokinetics of Tadalafil or Cialis in Rats." Now, what they found, and we haven't exposed the mechanism for this, but the mechanism for Naringin itself potentiating tadalafil is an inhibition of a liver enzyme, the one that we all know about if you study liver enzymes enough, which metabolizes drugs, called the CYP3A4 enzyme. Tadalafil is metabolized by CYP3A4 in the body, and grapefruit juice or Naringin, what they ultimately found is not Naringin itself, or partially Naringin, but ultimately naringenin, what it converts to in the body is responsible for this, is an inhibitor of CYP3A4. So you take tadalafil, which your body uses CYP3A4 to metabolize, so ultimately clear it out of your system. Grapefruit juice, or Naringin in this case, inhibits to some extent, for some degree of time, CYP3A4. I think the half-life is pretty short, but it still does it pretty powerfully. And then you don't metabolize that tadalafil or Cialis as quickly. therefore doubling in some cases. That's what ultimately ended up happening in this study, was more than 50%, I believe, the concentration of tadalafil in your blood. So what does this ultimately mean? It means, well, I mean, if it doesn't lower your blood pressure, taking Naringin with tadalafil is a super hack. You know, it's a hack that I use and that you could use to improve the erectogenic effect of Cialis. But what it also means is that if that concentration of Cialis doubles or triples in your blood, which plausibly it could absolutely do based on your own metabolism and of Naringin plus tadalafil, well, then you could have too high levels of tadalafil in the blood present at one time, which would lower your blood pressure to a point where potentially it could be problematic. So you want to fucking monitor that for sure. And that's why you start low on Naringin and, you know, maybe even dose 2.5 milligrams of tadalafil with it. And so you can figure out where you are, monitor blood pressure, move up from there. And what they found here is that compared to the control group, which got no Naringin or no tadalafil, or maybe had tadalafil and no grapefruit juice in this case, the Cmax, which is the maximum concentration, the maximum serum concentration of the drug at one time in the blood, increased by 57.4%. Now, what that ultimately means, so if you do 5 milligrams of tadalafil times 0.57, that would get you, I think it's just around 3 or so 3 milligrams additional. Technically speaking, that means if you took 5 milligrams of tadalafil, it would be like taking 8 milligrams of tadalafil. But if you metabolize this in a different way and your Cmax of tadalafil actually increases to like something like 75% or 80%, well, then it would increase by 3.75 milligrams, and you know, you'd be at 8.75 milligrams. But the thing about this is that what it feels like for me personally when I take 5 milligrams of tadalafil and just take my 220 of Naringin every other day is that it fucking potentiates it in a way where it kind of feels like 15 milligrams. I mean, the erections are fucking hard, very, very firm, and sometimes, you know, continue to stay hard after ejaculation, which, you know, usually prolactin inhibits that. So that's how powerful Naringin is for me personally, in the case of taking a mere 5 milligrams of tadalafil. So be careful, right? Make sure it doesn't lower your blood pressure too much. Find your dose, but by far it is one of the most effective and most intelligent, because it's multifaceted, multidimensional, and lowering hematocrit and improving erection quality add-on to TRT. Naringin, boys. This is why I always talk about it. Now, just for shits and giggles, boys, we're going to go to Amazon and search Naringin, and the first thing that comes up is the stuff that I have bought, the stuff that I have, which is Naringin extract from bulksupplements.com. I have no affiliation with them, but I have been using them for nootropic-like powders and other like actual powders for, I don't know, like 15 years or something. So they have good product, and I vetted this company. This is actual Naringin extract. It is very, very powerful stuff. It's about as pure Naringin as you can get. Sourced directly from citrus fruit. It's $28 for what is it, 8.8 ounce bag of it. That's exactly what I got, and it's a lot. It will last forever. My Naringin, I still have a bag like that. It looks like I haven't even touched it, because when you weigh it on a milligram scale, I mean, my 220 is meaningless. It's just not a lot of actual powder. So I will have Naringin for the next 20 years probably at the doses that I'm using. So this is a pretty good investment. It's like $1 a year. I've got bloods that I put on the channel when this was happening. I believe it was after my last cycle, or maybe toward the tail end of the cycle, where hematocrit had pushed like 48 or 49. It was going up there, and I just don't like it to be close to 50. And taking Naringin at the time 200 milligrams every day took my hematocrit down to 42. Now that came with some additional side effects. I was still running 5 milligrams tadalafil. It actually did lower my blood pressure a lot, which again indicates that it's potentiating the effect of tadalafil probably more than the 57% increase in the Cmax of the drug, or serum concentration at its peak. So that's why I can't dose that much of it. But suffice to say, it's very, very effective via red cell aggregation and then the clearing of those red blood cells at lowering hematocrit, and via the fact that it's a PDE5 inhibitor, a mild one, as well as potentiating the effect of tadalafil, it is profoundly erectogenic. Last caveat that I would give for people, because I want to make sure I'm perfectly clear, like it is a fucking awesome TRT atom, but you have to approach it carefully as you would anything, is that because it's an inhibitor of the CYP3A4 liver enzyme, metabolism enzyme, that there are other drugs for which that enzyme is the primary metabolizer. So you have to be careful about the drug concentrations of other things that you might be taking in conjunction with taking Naringin in your protocol, so that you don't elevate the Cmax substantially to the point where it's troublesome, or you increase the risk of toxicity of certain other drugs that you might be taking. So I would look through those drugs and see which of those are metabolized by the CYP3A4 enzyme so that you are educated about using Naringin and how it could potentially interact with other compounds in your stack or in your regimen. Overall, though, we look for TRT protocol add-ons that are multidimensional and can achieve a variety of different benefits and not just one benefit. Naringin is absolutely positively one of those compounds. I wouldn't go without it. I'm thankful that I found it, and now you guys have all the data on it. All right. Happy hunting. All right, boys, as I said in the beginning, look, I'm a coach on TRT protocol restructuring. That's primarily what we do here. If your protocol is subpar, and there are many reasons for a subpar protocol, then we'll get it dialed in. At this point, I've seen every type of protocol, every reason why a protocol isn't working, and usually know what to do right away. So if you need to redesign your protocol, just book me for a one-off call. I'll literally create a document on the web with your redesigned protocol, and you can ride off into the sunset. If you need ongoing help, and this is for sexual dysfunction specifically, erection issues, libido issues, we can't really do that in one protocol change. It might take many protocol changes, a lot of ancillary stuff that we've got to source in to have you try, but a very tailored, structured, ongoing program where you're working with me pretty much every other day, every third day. I mean, I'm up in people's asses like I need an update, need an update here. But the bottom line is we solve erection, libido, and otherwise issues on androgens, not on androgens, long-standing sexual dysfunction. You can hire me for any of that stuff in under a minute. We'll be on the fact-finding call as soon as tomorrow at livecortex.com. If you want to go at everything yourself, which many people do, then look, just get source lists, because then you have access to every compound that you might need to bring in to fix your protocol or to experiment, to cycle, do whatever it is you want to do, whether it's DHT itself, DHT gel, Testosterone esters, non-aromatizable androgens with estradiol, so you can truly manage your estrogen. You just want everything in your own hands, and source list gives you the opportunity to do that. Get it to livecortex.com. If you want a nootropic stack that is far better than Red Bull, far better than coffee, but synergizes pretty well with the both of them, just get Torque. I built it. It is profoundly powerful, and you can get it for 20% less, 20% off right now. Code's down in the description of this video. All right, brother. It's been an absolute pleasure hanging out with you. Hope you guys had a great weekend. Hope you're ready for the spring. I certainly am. It's kind of feeling a little springy outside. Like the video. If you liked anything we said or anything of this aligns with you, makes a huge difference to the channel. Honestly, it takes a second. It's free to do. Makes the channel grow. Sub to the channel, because more breakdowns like this on all of these topics, including TRT, HRT, HRT plus, sexual function, sexual dysfunction, everything else in between. I hope the rest of your day is awesome. I will chat with you guys later on this week. Thank you for watching, and I'll talk to you boys in the next one.